Tom, how are you? Which part of the world are you in right now? Which part of London, actually?
Hey, Mukund. I am in Bermondsey, so very near Tower Bridge, right in the heart of London. Lovely place.
Very nice. And you said that the weather is warm and nice?
Warm, sunny. We've actually had a heat wave for the last 2 weeks or so, which generally makes us all moan in the UK. We're built to keep heat in, not keep heat out, and so it makes it very uncomfortable.
That's funny. Give us a 2 minute background. I know you because of content, but talk a little bit more about how you got here. You have an interesting background. You actually had more of a B2C background and a consumer tech background, but now you've come to B2B and content. Walk us through your background.
Yeah, I've been a little bit all over the place. So for the last 10 years or so, I've been working in various different startups at different phases, all in the kind of technology space, some of them B2C, some of them B2B, different roles, marketing, sales, project management, ultimately landed in sales. The kind of most recent experience was at a company called Zephyr. So eventually we sold that to Zuora, but I was there as an enterprise sales rep helping B2C businesses build what's called dynamic paywalls. So if you go onto the BBC or the FT or the Economist and you read half an article and it cuts you off, says you need to subscribe, that was us, but getting really sophisticated with data to make sure that we're cutting you off at just the right time to maximize conversion. So an interesting background, and that's what kind of brought me around to what we do now in the B2B content space and realizing there's a big untapped opportunity to be a bit more sophisticated in how we monetize our content.
Got it. Walk me through, first off, you're working on a startup right now. It's new. And it's exciting because it's just the two of you guys trying to hire one more person. What's happening with B2B content? I know that B2B companies spend a lot of money on content, and content is extremely hard to show an immediate ROI on. But what are the things that you are seeing that is changing because of AI and B2B content?
Yeah, I think two things stand out to me. So one is obviously like, AI has disrupted massively the traditional role that content plays, right? So the old school content playbook is that it sits at the top of the funnel. It's there to capture eyeballs, right? And we have a very leaky funnel system that converts those eyeballs ultimately into kind of proper engagement that we can ultimately monetize and generate revenue from. That's changed because those eyeballs have disappeared, right? Those eyeballs now, right at the top of the funnel, they're looking at AI, they're talking to AI. That's where they're going for early information. What we would call problem-oriented content is kind of slowly disappearing. What is still very strong is solution-oriented content. So if you look at kind of how we typically classify search terms in Google, for example, you have informational, commercial, transactional search terms. Informational has been decimated. Transactional and commercial still really strong. So in terms of where content sits, then particularly in the B2B landscape, it's not about capturing a lot of volume at the top of the funnel. It's moved further down funnel. It's about being really surgical with how you identify high intent keywords that relate really strongly to your proposition. And the game really isn't about your ability to compete for the broad terms. It's your ability to find the surgical and the narrow terms and then be able to go and capture those and distribute content much more creatively. So that's probably the biggest thing that we've seen driven by AI. There's a whole load of implications then in terms of how that means a content team needs to function because you live a lot further down funnel. It means you can't operate in a silo. You're not kind of completely in control of your own destiny, right? It's not just driving a conversion off the content. You're actually working hand in glove with a sales team to ultimately convert a deal, but to do so a lot more efficiency with less reliance on lots of sales touch points.
Walk us through one step at a time. Let's go through each of these. Let's peel different layers of the onion. The first is transactional and commerce versus informational. Um, People are going from search to research. So it used to be they would go to Google, type something, then they have to go ahead and go through 100 links or 20 links or whatever they go through. Now the answer is almost given to you by ChatGPT.
Yeah.
How does the content change? Who provides informational content now? Is it that the LLMs are making up the information content themselves, or are there companies that are giving that content, the LLMs are indexing them, whatever you want to call the process that they go through, and then regurgitating, but you don't get any links or you don't get any clicks because of those. Is informational content then really useful in the pipeline, or is it just a vanity metric for more people viewing your pages?
Well, I think the trouble is it's not even really a vanity metric, right? Because I think it's something like 62, don't quote me exactly on this, 62% of Google searches now, even the ones that do go to Google are what we call zero-click searches, right? So they never come through to your page. So it changes the playbook massively, right? Um, I think so it doesn't mean that it's irrelevant because there's still a benefit to being featured in those AI overviews. The challenge that a lot of content marketers have is that it is largely a black box in terms of how to get into those overviews and how to get your brand featured. There are certain things that we know do influence it. So PR increasingly important. It changes the way that you write content because it's not getting into those overviews isn't about hitting keywords, right? It's about answering questions. If you can really specifically answer the question that the user types in, that's going to massively increase your chances of being featured in an
Mm.
AI overview, which is much more of a response to a specific question. So, first of all, from a consumer point of view, this is fantastic for content because we're not cramming it full of keywords anymore. We are optimizing to create compelling content that answers a user's question. That's a good thing. But I think it's a live debate as to the because it's such a black box GEO and no one can say for sure how to do it in a predictable way. Some people are trying, some people are saying actually we're not going to. But I think one thing that everyone is doing is shifting focus to make sure that when those people do come to their brand later down funnel, they have content that serves that in a high quality way.
So if you assume that informational content, someone's producing it, it's going to be somewhat valuable. It's not going to drive a lot of clicks. The transactional and the commerce content, if you look at it from a different view and the lens of a B2B across the funnel, across the buying journey kind of a perspective,
Hmm.
one of the things that is becoming interesting to me is how long the queries are on ChatGPT or Claude or whatever. It's no longer best CRM system or cheapest CRM system or CRM system for small companies. They
Yeah.
literally say, I am a finance person. I have this. I need that. I want left. I want right. I want to do this. Suggest for me three. Or what should my shortlist be? That seems to be becoming a big query overall. People want to get on the shortlist. So, what kind of content do you think drives I want to make the shortlist type of a conversation?
Well, that's brand, right? And it's the challenge is the ability to influence it. It is a black box, right? No one has a clear playbook, and if you see all sorts of people on LinkedIn, and you know when you have that thing of I've got this great playbook to do it. If you comment, then I'll send it to you. Don't ever trust that because no one knows the answer to this yet. Yeah, we know it's driven by brand, so there are certain
Yeah,
things that
yeah.
consistently influence it. If you are spending money on PR, that's going to help you your content ecosystem as a whole. But what we've lost is the predictability of we write piece of content X for keyword Y, and we are now featured in those searches. It's a much more holistic investment that you need to make in order to start getting into those. Um, but I can't give you a roadmap to that, and I don't think anyone can.
Walk me through what you think. You're talking to a lot of people, a lot of customers about B2B content. Um, I'm assuming that most of them are content teams, or are they CMOs, or are they all of the above?
Our customers, a bit of both, largely content teams that we're working with day to day.
Are they worried about their jobs? Because more and more people are putting together this AI content, AI slop, depending on how you want to be able to mention it. Are they worried that the content is becoming so prevalent to be used with AI that their jobs are becoming largely just editing what AI is writing, which is very, very difficult anyway?
Yeah, I think some are. And to be really honest, I think it probably ought to be, right? Like it's a difficult place to be. If so we're in a if you're a content marketer right now, the situation you find yourself in is you've spent the last decade, probably 2 decades, measuring your contribution in eyeballs, right? You've
Mm.
not ever really been able to draw the line from what you do to revenue. Now that was okay because we did understand that there was a correlation between eyeballs and revenue, and it always held content marketers back actually when it comes to getting promotions, getting pay rises, the fact that they were so far removed from it. When budgets get tight, the kind of top of funnel nice to haves are the first things that get cut, right? Well, now even the eyeballs have suddenly fallen off a cliff. So if you're a CEO, it's very logical to go and say, okay, well, where can we cut budget? Well, this team's performance has gone down massively. Now, I think that's a huge, huge mistake for anyone running a business, right? We are all under, I'm sure a lot of your listeners are under pressure when it comes to kind of go-to-market efficiency. It's the name of the game for everyone. Well, content is the one route that is like a one-to-many way to influence people. So at a time when you're trying to be more efficient, reducing your investment in the one-to-many route that you have to influence buyers is not a very good idea. But it's because, and this is where I try and always put it back on the content team's plate to say it's your job to draw the line from what you do to revenue. You are actually more important than ever, I believe, within an overall revenue function. But it requires solving that attribution problem and changing the way that we report on the effectiveness of content. Am I making sense there?
Yeah, you're making a lot of sense. I think the interesting part, Tom, is every team in marketing, content, demand gen, SEO, PR, everybody is struggling with attribution and tying back to revenue, right? Every team is. Before, maybe it's got nothing to do with AI so much. The new world is most CEOs are saying, I don't want you to be focused on your metrics anymore. I want you to be focused on the outcome.
Yeah.
And in many cases, they don't control the outcome, right? So you do an event. Let's say you put together an event and you have 25, 35 people show for it. It's a small event. And you have one or two leads that come out of it. But there are 25 people. I mean, you're spending for 25 people. You're going to get only two. Now the CEO is going, I don't know if that is effective or not, but every team is struggling with this attribution to revenue, content teams as well, just like everybody else are. So my question is, given that everybody is tying back to revenue, everybody is trying back to it, which is the way it should be. I'm not arguing that it shouldn't be that way,
Mm.
but there are a lot of things outside of their control as well. So what gives? What do you think will have to give, or what do you think will have to be true for content teams now to say, yes, we can say this piece of content is crucial in this part of the buying circle, and then moved so much in terms of customers or moved prospects along in the sales cycle to this stage?
So there's two things that come to mind because I'm a bit it always and I try and steer clear for us of the word attribution a little bit because I think it has those connotations of the kind of political arguing over credit, which I don't think is how you ought to use attribution. But that's always been how it's been implemented a lot of times, right? We take an attribution model and as a team, as a marketing team, we treat that as our North Star. Well, what you start to get is everyone optimizes for that attribution model, right? You know, over time you build up a sense of how it's weighted and you optimize for that rather than for our actual goal. And I've spoken to so many revenue teams where they're like, every individual function is hitting its goal, but we're missing our revenue goal. Well, it's one of the biggest failings of leadership that you could ever see, right? Um, so I think it's, to me, the way attribution should be used within a B2B context is you're looking at absolutely everything, right? The more models you can get your hands on, the more data that you can get your hands on, the better. But every team has one North Star, and that's revenue. And if we succeed as a team, we ultimately succeed. So everything else is indicative, right? It's directional data, and that's where attribution is great. Now it puts the onus on attribution tools and things like that to be more actionable and to find ways to make sure that whatever data, I'll give you an example from within our platform, right? Is we can show you a lot of things. We can show you the impact content has on bottom line close one revenue, but we can also show you what people are reading at every stage. To me, that's much more insightful when it comes to content because it allows
Mhm.
you to influence. If content's all in the distribution, it allows you to inform what we distribute at every stage of the funnel. So that's kind of what I mean when I say actionable attribution. And I think if you can switch teams to focus a lot more on getting that and treating it directionally as we should, then that is going to have a bigger impact.
If you had to think about more and more CMO, let's say you're a CMO
Mm,
and you're trying to make a decision on getting your team together, because every CMO has got, let's look at two scenarios. CMO that has a team of about, say, 20 people, and they're being told you have to reduce headcount to 10.
Yeah.
And then the flip side, you have a new CMO who's just one person who's told you can only hire three more people. Let's walk through the scenarios where content makes the first and content makes the second. Let's talk about the first one. 20 people in the team, typical marketing team in a B2B company. And there are two people in content, one person doing content for blogs and
Hmm.
or our learning center. Sometimes people have those. Sometimes people have video, YouTube video things as well, social content, that kind of stuff. And another person who's responsible for all of the other stuff, sales collateral, tools, more of a product marketing person. Would you cut both? Would you keep both? Would you repurpose one? Would you say now the sales content goes back to the sales team because you want attribution to revenue? And whereas the content marketing piece stays there, what would you do? Or would you say we need to find a better way to do this?
So your scenario, the scenario to make sure I'm clear is we've got 20 people in the marketing team. We need to get down to 10. There's two in the content team, PMM and traditional content marketer. Which are we cutting if we have to cut one, or is the framing of the question wrong? Is that the question? Just so I understand.
Yeah, yeah. If you had a 20% marketing team, you were told to cut to 10 people, what would you do with your content marketing team of two people within that 20?
So look, I'm biased. I wouldn't be looking to cut from the content marketing team because I think it is there's a couple of reasons. I think one, it requires in-house knowledge more than a lot of disciplines in marketing. I think that like those two roles, which I like that you called out, PMM and content marketing, I think they're becoming a lot more interwoven, right? Your content marketing team is how you establish your positioning in the market and how you communicate it and how you tell a story. I wouldn't be cutting any discipline that is critical to telling our story. Where I would be looking to cut is around the edges of some of the distribution channels. So if we've got a performance marketer in-house and things like that, then that potentially is where you can still replicate that externally a little bit more. Um, it's impossible to answer a question like that without a little bit more context on the
That's fair.
business
That's fair.
in
Because
question,
most
right?
of the CMOs I talk to are facing a 20-30% headcount. That's why I wanted to give you that question.
Yeah.
They've got to find out a way to cut 20-30%, in some cases, 30 to 50% headcount. I spoke to not a CMO, but a director level person at a very large 10,000 person company, 500 people in marketing. They're expecting to have the marketing team go down to about 250 people, half the number of people, 50% cut in marketing. So I'm going, where would they cut? And fortunately, if in their case, they have a lot of people in the marketing department that have the role of project manager. They're managing projects. So that's not a skill that's either here or there. They're not creative people, they're not technical people. So they're going to be the ones who are going to have the toughest time, I think, to justify the role. That's why I was just trying to get a little bit of a better sense of what might happen in content. Let's
I
switch
think
gears. If you're a content marketing agency, how does your world look like right now? Most of them have been focused on SEO content, top of the funnel content, getting visitors, eyeballs. And now they have to work much closely with the sales team within the company, with maybe not necessarily marketing team, but more of the product team. It's product content, sales content. Marketing has always been the bridge in the middle, right? If you're a content agency, how does your world change? Do content agencies exist in the future? Do they morph? Do they look different? How does that look?
I think they exist in the future. I think what I'm seeing in terms of content is you kind of seeing content separate out into two buckets, right? You've got people investing in AI content, which generally speaking is pretty crap. It's easy to produce, it's cheap. Um, and then you've got kind of high quality thought leadership. And that, I think, for quite a long time, I never like to say never with the rate of change at the moment, for quite a long time, that will remain A, valuable, and B, it will require human input. So I think as long as that is true, there will be a market for content agencies. I think everything that I've said about content marketing teams in-house is doubly applicable to agencies, right? So I think there's a lot more pressure to demonstrate that if they're in this bottom bucket where their job is to produce high quality, high impact content, they've got to be able to demonstrate and play that impact back to the organization they work with. Now, I think one of the reasons why they're to your answer to your question just now about the in-house CMO, right? They at least have the tools to work this stuff out, right? As B2Bs, we don't generally have our kind of data ducks in a row, and so we can't draw the line from content to revenue. But if you want to, you can. It is very understandable. We've just never done it. as an agency, you actually don't have the ability, you don't have access to the data that you need to
Right.
prove the impact that you're having. So I think they are rightly concerned about that. I do, like, yeah, if I'm an agency, I am looking to wrap more into my services that gets me closer to those kind of roles. So I think you don't want to just be the creative engine, but if you can start being including as part of your service the attribution and a little bit more marketing ops, then you actually start to get your hands on the data that you need to demonstrate your impact more, and that's the move I'd be making.
Do you think they also go from being content marketing agencies to what we would call, we're still making this word up, the agentic agency, people that automate things? They become a little bit more technical, less creative. That's what I'm hearing from a lot of B2B CMOs as well. Their teams used to have a mix of 30% creative, 30% technical, 30% just folks that are project managers, writers, things like that. Now they're saying 50% technical, 20% creative, and then all the other people, or maybe even 60% technical. So their roles are becoming a lot more technology oriented, especially in B2B. Marketing CMOs that I talk to for the first time are talking about content as one of the things that might actually be driven more by data than by, coming up with something that the customer would ask for or what they think the customer should have.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask for like my like mad science future prediction of where content ends up is that we don't actually produce content. What we do is we maintain internal databases, and then in real time we're generating content for individuals based on data that we hold on them, and we're doing that on a personal basis, right? So at that point, when we reach that point where the content production is truly automated, I think it's quite far away. Yeah, that becomes the skill. Um, it's kind of a bit of a detour. But yeah, I think it goes to the point about improve your marketing ops chops internally, and you're able to get the data that you need, but also kind of start getting involved in automating a lot of these things. One thing I would say that would give me positivity if I was an agency is I think that we've always treated product market fit as something that you get and then you have. And I think that's not going to be the case anymore, right? People fall in and out of product market fit much, much faster. There is like Series A, late seed companies I know that then I speak to an early stage founder and they are already being disrupted. So what that means is the way that we build an organization needs to change a little bit, right? You don't want to bloat headcount because you have to be able to kind of expand and contract as you continuously battle to recapture product market fit. Now, I don't know exactly what it looks like, but I think that is something that makes the agency model for me at DemandGenius and the fractional model incredibly appealing because I want to keep our fixed costs at every point as low as possible because product market fit isn't something that we can ride 10 years through an exit. It's something that we might sustain for one.
Yeah. No, I think I find it interesting that what you said is so true because I know a lot of I wouldn't call them friends, I'd call them colleagues and people that I know in the industry. When I say friends, I mean, it's not like I hang out with them. They're professionally people that I know. In the 2021, 2022 ramp up to funding, a lot of them took a lot of money. Some of them took 20 million, 30 million, whatever. And they pretty much run out of it to a large extent. They've not yet reached the point where they're breaking even, and they have bloated teams. They were built for the SaaS of the previous era, so to speak, to a large extent. They're trying to cut, but it's a very hard decision to figure out whether they will lose some of their customers to nimbler, smaller, purpose-built AI native companies, software, or services.
Yeah, I think it's tough, right? Because you've also built your whole organization around having that headcount. Yeah, I mean it's a tremendous opportunity for any startup, but I think that's the challenge for any organization that is already at scale in terms of headcount. You need to be able to cut those people without losing your short-term advantage. So it's like, what's the right time to do it? Because at the moment, a lot of their competitive advantage is still wrapped up in their headcount, right? Like that AI has not gotten to the point where it's replacing a lot of humans yet. So you kind of there's a short-term cost to the long-term change that you need to make and the timing of that. I'm glad I'm not the one having to make that call.
Awesome. Tom, it was terrific talking to you. Next time, maybe in a couple of months or so, when we talk to you, I'd love to get your take on your product. You're building a new product for the content world. We didn't get a chance to talk about it, sorry, today, but we definitely like to have you on. Maybe we'll do a demo kind of a thing so people can get a chance to see it 3 months or so from now when you might be a little bit more further along in the process.
Sounds fantastic. Yeah, and if anyone wants to check it out, demand-genius.com or hit me up on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks.